Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to today's Friday Reflections on this, the 22nd of November 2025. I hope you are well wherever you are tuning into this from. And today we are going to continue in our series studying Surah al-Kahf. That's the cave chapter from the Quran. Using this book, The Life and Leadership Lessons from Surah al-Kahf by Professor Dr. Hassan Mohi-ud-Din Qadri. And we're going to go to page 117 today, studying from verses 50 to 59. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. The story of Adam and Satan. The story of Adam and Iblis, which is the Arabic name of Satan, is a timeless narrative woven deeply into humanity's spiritual tapestry. It illuminates profound truths about divine love, human vulnerability, and the subtle dangers of pride. Through a verse-by-verse journey, this exploration seeks to reveal mystical insights, inviting the heart to reflect on obedience, humility, and the eternal struggle between light and darkness within every soul. Verse 50. And remember, when we said to the angels, prostrate before Adam in veneration. So they prostrated, except Iblis. He was one of the jinn, so he deviated from the command of his Lord. Would you still take him and his offspring as guardians beside me, though they are your enemies? How evil is an exchange for the wrongdoers. The command to prostrate before Adam symbolizes the immense honor bestowed upon humanity, chosen to bear the divine trust of knowledge and responsibility. This act was not merely a physical prostration, but a profound acknowledgement of Adam's spiritual and intellectual potential. Iblis's refusal, rooted in arrogance and envy, highlights the perils of pride and disobedience. This verse cautions against the destructive power of ego, which blinds individuals to truth and to justice. Very important point a lot of people don't realize that they make when they themselves make the very same mistake as Iblis and judge someone else who has come from maybe a different family, a different background, and not realize their potential and thinking themselves better than that person. Maybe because they've studied at a different university, or come from a different country, or speak a different language. Whatever their reasoning behind it, there are various ones that people use. But it boils down to the same thing, which is looking down upon someone else and thinking yourself better. One of the things that my sheikhs taught me is you always look at other people as if they are better than you. Assume the best of them and assume that you're making mistakes. When I do that, I treat people with more respect and more kindly. The point is, whether it's true or not in any particular instance, it cultivates good manners in the individual and it helps us keep our ego and pride in check. Even if we err the wrong way in that and we treat someone better than they deserve, we give them respect that they're due, and appreciate them. That's better for our soul than if we start to denigrate them or look down upon them. And it tends to, when people behave in that way, even if the person is not their enemy, is not averse to them, it tends to cause them to behave in that way. They become hostile to the person who's treating them badly. And this is not good for any kind of relations between people. Pride and arrogance, ego, are at the root of almost all the problems that we have within society. When you actually analyze the roots of what goes on, whether it's problems between relationships, where relationships break down, whether it's even wars, conflict between countries that can result in wars, even the big world wars. Instead of people working together for the common good, it all comes down to pride, arrogance, ego. The Shaykh continues. From a leadership perspective, this teaches that humility and submission to higher principles are essential for genuine leadership. Leaders must recognize their responsibility as stewards, avoid arrogance, and embrace their role with grace. Moreover, the verse cautions against forming alliances with those who embody rebellion and enmity, as Iblis did. Just as Iblis is depicted as an eternal adversary, leaders must carefully discern their companions and advisors, ensuring that they align with integrity and truth. Iblis was immensely honored at that time. He was in the company of angels before he was cast out. This act of disrespect, of ego, of arrogance caused him to be cast out of that most honored station among the company of the angels, a very high rank. He was cast out because of his arrogance and his ego. When you think about this in a leadership situation, acting in a similar way to Iblis could cause you to lose a position of influence or authority, could cause you to lose respect that you've worked hard for, and many other consequences. So before we let our pride and arrogance get the better of us, remember to breathe and take a step back from a situation before you end up doing something which you could regret, and as in the case of Iblis, had immense lasting consequences. Verse 51. I did not make them witnesses to the creation of the heavens and the earth, nor their own creation. I do not take misleaders as assistants. This verse asserts Allah's absolute authority in creation, reminding us that neither humans or jinns witness the intricate process of the universe's design. It emphasizes the divine wisdom that lies beyond human comprehension and the futility of relying on those who lead others astray. For leaders, this serves as a humbling reminder that ultimate knowledge and power belong to Allah. Effective leaders acknowledge their limitations and seek guidance from authentic sources, rather than misguided influences. Think about that in today's context. How many people are taking their knowledge, their information, even about this deen, from people who are not even educated to any reasonable degree on the religion? And they're taking them as their guides, when much of what they are teaching doesn't make sense when you actually analyze it, and causes more discord, more problems within society. This is actually what we call fitna. That's what fitna means. And they're taking these influences as their guides. And Allah makes very clear in this verse, He does not take misleaders as His assistants. So why are people taking their deen from people who are misleading them? This verse also teaches that leadership requires reliance on trustworthy advisors and the rejection of those who promote falsehoods. A wise leader builds a team rooted in honesty and expertise, mirroring the divine principle of avoiding association with the corrupt. Very good piece of advice on leadership. Regardless whether you are a leader within a company, within a political institution, within diplomacy or the civil service, or whichever area of life that may involve leadership, you need to take any guidance from people who are trustworthy, whose knowledge is rooted in, authentic sources, good teachers. It's rooted. It's not something which they're just spouting themselves and they've not based it on anything sensible or authentic. And we will need advisors in certain roles because no one has studied everything. If you are good at science and you become a leader, you may need to consult people who have other fields of knowledge, people who understand the political situation, people who understand geography or the humanities, people who understand religions, geopolitics, who has studied all of these fields. So yes, you will need to take advice from people, but make sure that those people are qualified either through academic studies and researches or through experience within their respective fields. Otherwise, why are you taking them as advisors? They can only lead you to ruin. Verse 52. On the day he will say, call those whom you claimed as my partners. They will call upon them, but they will not respond to them. And we will cause a destructive separation between them. The imagery of this verse is profound. It depicts a day when false claims and misplaced trust will be exposed. Those who once depended on fabricated deities or transient priorities will find no solace as the separation between truth and falsehood becomes apparent. This serves as a stark reminder of the accountability and the consequences of misguidance. In leadership, this verse underscores the importance of guiding followers toward enduring truths rather than temporary gains. Leaders must ensure that their vision and actions lead to lasting success, fostering a culture of authenticity and accountability. Just as false gods will fail their adherents, a leader who relies on deceit or manipulation will ultimately fail their followers. Leadership grounded in truth creates a lasting impact and avoids the fate of disillusionment. ensuring what we're saying, what we're teaching is based on what is true, and it's based. It's very important, because otherwise, what are you leading people towards? Allah also says in the Holy Quran, the truth stands clear from falsehood. Jesus also taught that there's a difference between a house built on firm foundations, like a rocks, strong rock, rather than a house built on sand. It's the same principle. House built on sand with no foundations will fall. Similarly, truth will cast away falsehood. Falsehood will fail before it, because it's not based on anything. Some people think they can get to wherever they're going by misleading people, by manipulating them, by twisting the truth. But ultimately, those lies will come out. They will be exposed. And then what do you have? You have nothing. And actually, you get shown up to be a manipulator. And no one likes to be manipulated. Verse 53. The evildoers will see the fire and will realize that they are about to fall into it, and they will find no means of escape from it. This verse vividly depicts evildoers standing before the fire, realizing their inevitable downfall. Their despair reflects the consequences of a life spent ignoring truth and justice. This realization comes too late, as the path of escape has already closed. This verse emphasizes foresight and ethical decision-making for leaders. Leaders must assess the long-term implications of their choices, ensuring alignment with the principles of justice and morality. The verse cautions against short-sighted pursuits that prioritize material gain over enduring integrity. A leader's responsibility is to guide their team towards sustainable success while avoiding the damaging consequences of unethical behavior. And you notice with Islam, the emphasis on truth and justice. Truth and justice. It's a constant theme that runs throughout the Quran. There is no truth without justice. There is no, we're saying that Islam is the truth and that's it, it just is. You must believe it. No, it's true because it is based upon justice. It's based upon ethics and morality. Treating people right, making sure everyone gets fairly treated. Mistreatment is something which is frowned upon or condemned depending on the degree of it. So important within Islam. And I know some of you may be watching and saying, yeah, but I know Muslims who do this or Muslims who do that. People are human. But this is a really sad reality of our times. Because Islam is so firmly rooted in truth and justice, and it is people's hope in truth and justice. And for that reason, it's something that should make sense. And if it's not making sense, then the way, whatever's being taught is not really Islam, even if it's called Islam. Because that's part of the defining principles of what Islam is. Has to be just, has to be true, has to be merciful, kind, compassionate. And as the Sheikh says here, leaders in whichever field of life, if they stray from these principles of truth and justice, morality, decency, they'll end up failing those who are following them. And at some point, their endeavors will ultimately fail. It's only a matter of time. And that's what the symbolism of the people about to fall into the fire, as well as the hellfire and that side of things, like when people pass, this also captures the situation that people often find themselves in when they go down the wrong road. And they think they're going to somehow be successful in it. You know, they're doing some criminal activity and they think that they're going to get themselves rich through that. Until they suddenly realize everything's about to come down like a pack of cards around them. They end up getting arrested. They end up getting sent away to prison for years. Their whole reputation is ruined. They're no longer able to do anything constructive with their life. That's even before you pass. Think carefully, my brothers and sisters, before you take decisions that can lead to your own destruction. Verse 54. Indeed, we have presented in this Quran every kind of illustration for people. But the human being is most contentious of all creatures. Humanity's tendency towards argumentation and contention, even when presented with a clear truth, is highlighted here. Despite the Quran offering profound wisdom and diverse examples, people often engage in debates that distract from the essence of its guidance. Leaders can draw an important lesson from this verse. Clear communication is essential, but so is patience. How often you communicate something, no matter how clearly, and people aren't ready for it. When that happens, we have to be patient. Everything has its time. Everything has its place. It's hard. It's really hard being in that situation. But you think about Noah, who was communicating with his people for hundreds of years, according to both the Bible and their own tradition. Imagine that. Fortunately, today we don't need hundreds of years of patience, but we still need to be patient. Leadership often involves addressing resistance and contention, as people may struggle to accept change or truth. And how true is that? I remember things that I highlighted within my communities here in the West Midlands over 20 years ago. And then certain things came out in the media a few years later that were even worse than the things that I was highlighting to these mosques and their leaders. They were not listening at the time. And I was saying, as Muslims, we have to address these issues and not ignore them before they get out of hand. And they did get out of hand. And as communities, they didn't do enough about it. It's really frustrating when that happens. But it's so true. People struggle to accept change or truth. People get set in their ways. There are other things that I've highlighted, and others, about how Islam is often presented in the West with a lot of cultural baggage from other communities. Even for the children within those communities, this is not necessary and actually creates a lot more problems than it resolves. I'm not saying people should forget their heritage, far from it. But at the same time, people have to find a way within this society that is comfortable for them. And even if the parents or the grandparents are comfortable with certain customs and ways of going about things, which may have been comfortable for them, may still be comfortable for them, it doesn't mean that their children or grandchildren that grow up in this society are going to be comfortable with the same things. We have to adapt and change. But with change, it's difficult for people to come to terms with. And this is why also I say to people who are younger members of these communities that to be patient, because things are changing. But you've got to also bear in mind where your parents or grandparents came from and what they're used to and what they're able to understand. And there's a certain amount of this even within like even between me and my parents, who are from the same society, from the same background. So it's like you have that when people come from another country and another culture, and have been through a lot of change, it's hard for them. But at the same time, that also doesn't mean we shouldn't be pushing for that change if that change is beneficial. A wise leader recognizes when to engage in dialogue and when to focus on delivering their message with clarity and conviction, understanding not all arguments are worth pursuing. And that is a very important piece of wisdom. Choose your battles carefully. I think that's something Sun Tzu said. If I remember my colleague Mohammed Abbasi, he's often talking to me about Sun Tzu. Choose your battles carefully. Similarly, understanding that not all arguments are worth pursuing, choose your arguments carefully. When to argue, when to leave it, even if you know that you're right. Is it important to win that argument? Is that argument really going to make change? Or is that argument just going to make a very upsetting afternoon or evening? When to just leave things? And when to stand your ground because it's important? That is also important, but it's knowing when. And that comes with wisdom. Verse 55. Nothing prevents people from believing in their Lord when guidance has come to them and asking forgiveness, except that the fate of the earlier people overtakes them, or their punishment confronts them face to face. This verse laments humanity's reluctance to believe and repent despite receiving clear guidance. People often delay action, waiting for external forces to compel them, much like the earlier nations that realized their mistakes only when punishment overcame them. So this verse really is talking about, similar to what we've been just discussing, about change and knowing when to change, knowing when to take action in order to effect that change. A lot of people are complacent. They wait and they wait and they wait. They don't do anything until they're forced to change. And this is something that Allah sends to us. If we do not change ourselves, Allah arranges things in such a way that we will be forced to do something about it. But when that happens, it is more painful for us. If we use our wisdom, if we use our minds and our intelligence, and when we see that something needs to change, we actually step up and change that thing of our own initiative, it's usually less painful than when circumstances come to force us to change. And if something needs to change, it will happen eventually. A good example of this is the African slave trade. There was a lot of people who were complacent about that, who thought it was just the way they did business, and they left things. And even when there were voices that were highlighting the fact these are human beings like us, they just happen to be a different color and come from a different country. They're human beings. They need the same human rights. They need the same dignity as everyone else within their society. Slavery is wrong. And they still carried on doing it. Until eventually, what did this country do? It did ban it. And then they actually made a special unit of the Royal Navy that actually went and hunted down the slave forts and destroyed the forts and raided the slaving ships and freed the slaves. It's a lot more painful when you take military action in order to stop a thing than if people had realized that this was wrong and actually weaned themselves off the slave trade and freed these people and started employing them as paid workers instead of enslaving them. But some people, they didn't want to change. They got complacent because it didn't affect them personally. And they were not identifying with the pain and the suffering of the people who were enslaved. And my brothers and sisters, even though this particular slave trade has ended, slavery still goes on in today's world. And there are still people suffering as a result of that. It's not being completely stamped out. And how many people ignore that? I raised this at a meeting in London where I was asked to come along as a speaker. And when there was the questions and answers, someone asked me a question about slavery within Islam. And I highlighted the fact that in the Quran, Allah encourages people to free their slaves and highlights that everybody is equal and God has honored every son and daughter of Adam. I said, so there's every reason to stop slavery and not good reasons to keep it. And I said, it's clear the indication that which direction Allah wanted us to go. Although slavery was endemic then, I said, but before you judge, within a few miles of this building, there were probably people being kept as slaves in London. And the person, no, it doesn't happen here. But it does. It's well documented. And what are people doing about this? Like a lot of things, if it doesn't affect them personally, people ignore it. And as the Sheikh mentions here, this highlights the challenge for leaders to inspire proactive change. Effective leadership consists in motivating followers to act before crises arise, while fostering a culture of accountability and initiative. A leader must offer both warnings and encouragement, creating an environment where individuals feel empowered to take responsibility for their growth and for actions. Allah rewards initiative as well. It's an important point. Remember, Allah tells us in the Quran, if you take one step towards Allah, Allah takes 10 steps towards you. This also means if you take one step towards doing the right thing. Verse 56, we do not send the messengers, but as bearers of glad tidings and as warners. And those who disbelieve dispute falsely to refute the truth thereby. And they take my revelations and what they are warned about in mockery. Messengers, peace and blessings be upon them all, are sent with a dual role to inspire hope through glad tidings and to issue warnings against detrimental paths. Yet the disbelievers resort to baseless disputes to undermine the truth and mock the divine message. This reflects the resistance faced by those who uphold truth and justice. Leadership embodies this dynamic. A leader must balance optimism with realism, motivating their team while acknowledging potential pitfalls. Opposition and criticism are inevitable. However, a true leader remains steadfast, using these challenges to bolster their resolve and to refine their vision. Mockery and rejection serves as tests of patience and resilience, qualities essential for enduring leadership. Anytime you try and do the right thing, you call people towards what is right, whether it is a religion or whether it is just something that needs to change, you will find people who mock you. You will find people who come against that. And you have to have the resolve to continue. Otherwise, nothing will change. Or maybe it will change in a very bad way instead. Verse 57. Who is more unjust than he who has been reminded of the signs of his Lord? But he turns away from them and forgets what his hands have sent forth. Indeed, we have placed coverings over their hearts, lest they should understand it, and a deafness in their ears. And if you invite them to the path of guidance, they will never let themselves be guided. Turning away from divine signs, despite clear reminders, leads to spiritual stagnation and moral decline. This verse highlights the consequences of ignoring the truth and forgetting one's accountability. The coverings over hearts and the deafness in ears signify a self-imposed barrier to understanding and growth. You could say, in like modern terminology, the covering of the ears, the covering of over the hearts and the deafness of the ears is like what we call a mental block that people they're not being able to get past. But it's written in an old-fashioned kind of way. Leaders encounter similar challenges when addressing resistance to change or feedback. This verse teaches the importance of persistence in guiding others, even when confronted with the rejection. While not everyone accepts guidance, a leader's responsibility is to keep offering clarity and inspiration, understanding that transformation requires willingness from the follower. You can't make change unless you take people with you. So you have to work with people and gradually coach and encourage them. And this is indeed what our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, did. In order to take those Arabs in the Middle East with him 1400 years ago. A lot of what the Prophet was teaching them was very different from what they were familiar with and understood. So he had to have immense patience and to win them over. Verse 58. And your Lord is all forgiving, the possessor of mercy. Were he to punish them because of what they had committed, he would have hastened the punishment for them. But they have a fixed time, when they shall not find a refuge beside him. Allah's infinite mercy and forgiveness are contrasted with the inevitability of justice. While he postpones punishment out of compassion, the fixed time for accountability remains inescapable. This balance between mercy and justice offers a profound lesson in leadership. Leaders must emulate this divine attribute by providing opportunities for growth and correction while maintaining accountability. Forgiveness fosters trust and motivation, but it should be balanced with clear consequences to ensure fairness. Patience is also emphasized, as effective leadership often requires waiting for the right moment to implement changes or decisions. So, for instance, if you are a manager within a company and you have a new employee who comes in, doesn't quite understand some of the policies that you put forward, you have to have patience with them. That doesn't mean you ignore it. It means you bring them into the office, you have a conversation with them, you don't humiliate them, and you highlight the importance of the policies that you put forward. And then you give them a time in order, like a probationary period, in order to see if they implement those changes. And if you see progress, then you lenient with them and keep encouraging them. But ultimately, if there's no progress, or worse, they actually get worse and actually start doing more wrong things, then you have to have justice. You have to let them go and employ someone else. There has to be some disciplinary measure taken. And similarly with Allah, Allah gives us a lot of mercy and forgiveness. But ultimately, if a person keeps doing the wrong things, then ultimately there will be a time when we are held accountable for that. Verse 59. And those are the towns that we destroyed when they acted unjustly, and we had fixed a time for their destruction. The destruction of past nations due to their injustice serves as a powerful reminder of the consequences of corruption and moral decay. And I should read that again, because a lot of people ask about this. Why were certain places punished in the Quran? Why, also in the Bible? Why were certain places punished? Why was there destruction? The destruction of past nations due to their injustice It's not whether they were Muslims or not that they were destroyed, not whether they were believers or not that they were destroyed. It's because they were committing injustice. So one of the first things that we have to do is rein in ourselves and ensure that we're not being unjust, because that's what earns the punishment of Allah. Each community experienced a fixed time, reflecting the divine order in the rise and fall of civilizations. This verse underscores the importance of justice and accountability for leaders. Power and authority are trusts that must be exercised with fairness and responsibility. A leader must plan with foresight, ensuring that their actions uphold integrity and contribute to lasting success. The timing of events teaches leaders to act wisely and decisively, understanding that every moment is part of a greater divine plan. Conclusion. As the story of Adam and Iblis unfolds, it reveals a tale as old as time, a story of honor and betrayal, humility and arrogance, of divine wisdom and human responsibility. When the command was given for the angels and Iblis to bow before Adam, it was more than just an act of submission. It was a recognition of the sacred trust bestowed upon humanity. The angels, with hearts devoted to obedience, prostrated without hesitation. But Iblis, the devil, consumed by his own sense of superiority, refused. His heart, hardened by arrogance, could not accept that Adam, formed from clay, was chosen over him. At that moment, a profound lesson was woven into the fabric of existence. The downfall of those who allow pride to overshadow submission, who let envy cloud their judgment, and who choose defiance over humility. Iblis was cast out, yet his enmity was not an end there. With relentless determination, he vowed to lead humanity astray, to whisper doubts and distractions, and to tempt them away from the path of divine guidance. Yet in this struggle between light and darkness, humanity was not left defenseless. The Quran is like a beacon in the storm, continuously calls upon mankind to recognize their purpose, embrace humility, and to reject the illusions of pride and falsehood. Each verse serves as a mirror, reflecting the consequences of heedlessness and the rewards for faithfulness. For leaders, this story is more than an ancient narrative. It serves as a call to action. It warns of the dangers of arrogance, emphasizes the need for wise counsel, and highlights the responsibility of guiding others with truth and sincerity. Just as Iblis was cast aside for his rebellion, any leader who governs with ego and deception is destined for failure. True leadership is a sacred trust, demanding humility, wisdom, and an unwavering commitment to justice. And so, as we walk the path of life, we must ask ourselves, will we follow the whispers of pride, or will we bow like the angels in recognition of a greater truth? Will we chase fleeting power, or will we embrace the responsibility entrusted to us? The choice, as it was for Iblis and Adam, remains ours to make, but in the end, only those who choose submission to the divine will find their place among the honored. And with that amazing conclusion, I think I will close it there. The book that I've been basing this study on is called Life and Leadership Lessons from Surah al-Kahf by Professor Dr. Hassan Mohi-ud-Din Qadri. It's well worth getting. It's fresh to the press this year, so it's a new book that hasn't been out before. And it's really good because it brings the teachings of Surah al-Kahf right up to date and how to be practical in the modern world. If you find these videos and my other contents productive and useful and you benefit from them, please don't forget to like and to subscribe. And also there is a link on all of my social media channels and often on the posts to my Buy Me a Coffee. If you can support this link, this helps me to be able to focus on producing good content. and these videos. So please, if you can find it within yourselves to support that, even just for a few pounds every month, it will allow me to focus on delivering these productive contents, informative videos, and continue to provide this free of charge for everyone within our communities. May Allah bless you all. I wish you all have a very good evening and a wonderful weekend. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May the peace and blessings of God be with you all.